Well, this one's going to be definitely interesting. I think Artemis is probably one of the few female characters out there I actually give a shit about. I think, well, in modern day anyway. But that's mostly because I think Scott Lodell and Dexter Soy both drew her well and knew what they were going to do with her. They implemented her well. Um, Another thing is, this is just a character I really love. I mean, I have a soft spot for redheads, so that shouldn't be much of a surprise to anyone who actually pays attention to these videos and has seen them consistently. But and plus, I just kind of like her backstory. There's a lot of things I like about Artemis Bana-Mighdall. I think is how you pronounce her name. I can never remember. I can never figure that part out. Like that's the one thing I am terrible with pronunciations. I am awful. But yeah, this was probably a character that I thought was one of the better parts of the Red Hood Rebirth. Like there were two characters I liked in the Red Hood Rebirth run. It was Red Hood and Artemis. Beyond that, I didn't really give a shit about most of everything. Like Bizarro, I kind of liked, but yeah, Artemis and Red Hood were the main things that kept pulling me back. And with that, I'll just move into this video, which is there's actually some things I think create writers should look at Artemis and kind of take some notes on what to do because she never felt overused. Like she never felt gratuitous. No, not gratuitous. Redundant. Like she felt like she belonged in the scene. It didn't feel like she was just forced in there for the sake of, well, just for the sake of it. Another thing is, I hear a lot of people say they want more inclusion and diversity. Well, here's something that I probably will forget to cover later on, but she technically fits that quote. Artemis is a bisexual character, at least in Rebirth. And she's a redhead, so you got double the representation there. I was actually surprised that crowd didn't try to get her more comics like there is in our. I'm also surprised DC hasn't tried to pander to them with an Artemis Con. I mean, there's no way they'll do it as well as Scott Lodell did, unless they find someone better, which you'd think wouldn't be that hard. Scott Lodell, from what I hear, he's like an average writer. And plus, now I don't think he'll ever be able to work at DC now, or if he does, it'll be limited because of the accusation against him. And I have no idea what he's doing now. But yeah, another Me Too victim, I guess. And yeah, with that, now we can move on with the video. Artemis debuted in 1994. She was created by William Messner-Loebs and Mike Dorota Jr. First appeared in Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 90. And that's all I really want to say about her creatively. I don't think she was used that much in like back in the day. Unless she might have been, I don't know. But if not, then this sounds like she actually has something in common with Red Hood. When Red Hood was first created, he was not being used properly as Jason Todd. Then they brought him back, and he was repurposed as the Red Hood, or not intentionally. I don't think that was the intention. That was kind of like a serendipitous thing that just occurred. Um, I would say the same of Artemis in Rebirth because I don't know much about her before that. I think I heard once they were going to use her to replace Wonder Woman, and I knew that didn't pan out like those. But I heard this years ago, back when I still listened to Comics Explained, before I realized he's kind of a douche. But enough about that guy. Um, yeah, that's all about creatively anyway to say about her is just she was repurposed, and I think in Rebirth they used her very well. I don't know if they used her in New 52 or before that, or how they used her, but although she has been in some movies, and they actually blackwashed her in one of them, or maybe both of them, hard to say. Anyway, moving on. In background, Artemis belonged to a group of Amazonians who split away from the main group of Amazonians, or they were a separate tribe that belonged to them. I'm still kind of confused on the origin of the Bana-Mighdalls. Again, like I don't have their names right in front of me, so I can't really say for sure. But they were like a separate tribe of Amazonians, and unlike the main tribe, they didn't have immortality. And Artemis was told from an early age she was destined for greatness. As you can imagine, that didn't pan out so well. Eventually, she would end up leaving her tribe to go on adventures for reasons that were beyond her control. In personality, you're not reading that wrong. To describe Artemis's personality, I would have to agree with Red Hood. She has the personality of a longshorewoman. I mean, it's a likable personality, I think, and she kind of lets you know where you stand with her. Usually, she's pretty blunt in that regard. She knows what she wants to do. She knows how she'll go about doing it, and she's not shy about it. But she kind of reminds me of how I once heard someone describe Yennefer. Kind of a bitch. Kind of. Not really a bitch, but she has her bitchy moments. And she has this weird habit of saying funny things in certain circumstances, like when Bizarro was pressing Jason against the glass of her cell. She was like, "You know what's sad? You're actually doing better than I thought." And he's like, "Oh yeah, no, don't help. I got it under control." And he's saying this sarcastically, and it's just funny to listen to. The banter between her and Red Hood really kind of kept on bringing me back. Then I just wanted to see what the dynamic would continue to be and how they developed Artemis's character. And she wasn't always the best of a person. She did some messed up things in her life. She used to be a mercenary. She was willing to kill people for money. She kind of had some of an ego problem when she was a kid, but that, well, actually, I wouldn't say it's been resolved. It's still an issue, kinda. But, and she just says, like, not snarky, but kind of rude things that are funny. Like, if a normal person said that to you, you'd be kind of pissed and want to punch them. When Artemis says it, it just comes off funny in the way she words it, or the way Scott Lobdell read her wording it. And that's all I can really say about her personality. She has a likable personality in the way she teases Red Hood, in the way she treats Bizarro, and the way she treats people in general is very appealing. As I mentioned before, I like the dynamic between Red Hood and Artemis. I mean, Red Hood's one of my favorite characters, and I like just seeing him interact with people in general. With Artemis, it's kind of, well, they're friends. They didn't get along at first. I think her exact words were if he kept pointing his guns at her, she would be the last person he ever saw, or the last woman he ever saw. They gradually developed a rapport or a rapport, and she eventually became a member of the Outlaws for a time, and became one of Red Hood's closest friends, or one of the friends that I think had the most profound impact on how he views things, or influenced the way he would develop as a person, because he's a sad person, Red Hood. I think he needs people around to help change his perspective and lighten his mood, and just make him generally a better person. Like, I think he's a good person, but I think his friends like Artemis definitely help, so she does what I think a good companion character does. She causes the protagonist to see something in a new light. And she does kind of do that. I say the same thing about Bizarro and how he handles the problem. Because normally Jason just kills people. Or, well, he did in Rebirth. He had to tone down the killing because it was the only way Batman would let him operate in Gotham. Bizarro and Artemis made no such promises. They're able to do that. And she operated pretty well with the Outlaws. I again like the dynamic between her and Red Hood. I like the dynamic between her and Bizarro. It's very she had something of a motherly relationship with Bizarro, or at least that's how people would describe it. I liked it. I liked the sort of gradual buildup of that relationship between the three. How Red Hood came to, I wouldn't necessarily rely on them, but he knew he could depend on them to have his back. And like she gradually warmed up to Red Hood and Bizarro, so there was also that factor. One of the things that always struck me about Artemis was she was both beautiful and capable. I mean, she's strong enough to at least hold back Bizarro, who has the strength of Superman. And she's not as strong as Wonder Woman, I believe, so she's not exactly a lightweight when it comes to physical strength. She has the skills of an Amazonian warrior. She's able to give Red Hood trouble, but then again, he is probably the least out of all the people in the Bat family. I think he has the least experience, so that's to be expected. And he really didn't have time to plan it out for that encounter because when they met, it was totally at random. But and she doesn't, and she's very tomboyish in a way, but not too tomboyish. And I like tomboys. I think that's a cute trope in mangas, and probably can be in comics if they're done right. But they didn't need to make her less feminine. They didn't have to make her more masculine like some women in comics are now. I think they did that with Black Canary a while back, with how they depicted her or drew her. And yeah, she's both capable physically and mentally, attractive but also strong. It kind of just showed to me that you could have a character who was feminine and strong. You just had to have an explanation for why they're able to do some of the things they do. I mean, Artemis, you can explain away what she's capable of doing because she's an Amazonian. Well, sort of. She no longer has. She's part of the Bana-Mighdall, so she no longer has the immortality of Amazonians, but that's about it. She had all the other physical strengths and traits of an Amazonian physiology. She has. So you can make a female character feminine and strong. You just have to have an explanation of why they're able to do what they do, or at least that was something that I took away from like reading her. Like I had to really think on this because at the time when I was reading this, I wasn't aware of certain issues in the comic book industry. But yeah, I think she's a very compelling character, and it surprises me that the people who wanted representation didn't pay more attention to her, or if they did, they didn't make that much noise about her. And for the record, I hate that crowd, but this is something I think we could have agreed on: is that Artemis was a good character, and actually, no, I'll save that for later. Powers and abilities. Like, if there's one thing I really like about Artemis besides her personality and well, the dynamics she has. I also like how she's not a like she's not helpless. She is able to defend herself and dish out some pain just as much as Red Hood can. And she's also able to deal with certain problems. One of this should be comes down to her Amazonian physiology. She has enhanced intellect, strength, durability, stamina, agility, and self sustenance. Additionally, she also has advanced hand-to-hand combat skills. She's a skilled archer and a skilled swordswoman. So yeah, she can definitely handle her own in a fight. You don't have to worry about that. We see this countless times when she and Red Hood have to fight, and they don't fight you; they fight other criminals, and they do. She does specifically an excellent job. I'm pretty sure she even knocked Jason off his ass a couple of times and broke his mask. She's well equipped from her various adventures from before she met Red Hood and Bizarro. She had the lasso of submission, which she actually belonged to Superwoman, who was from an alternate timeline, belonged to the Crime Syndicate, I believe. Wonder Woman later gave her this and she renamed it. She carries around Mistress, a giant battle axe of the gods that she can call at her will. She later, through her adventures with Red Hood, acquires the Bow of Ra, a powerful artifact once belonged to Ra and his designated Bana champion. With it in hand, Artemis can discharge either regular or hyper-destructive solar energy arrows potent enough to shatter stars and planets. She has a pair of scythes and a massive sword that she can conjure at will. So she's well equipped for most jobs she has to put up with, but In Rebirth, I mostly only saw her use her fists. I never saw her kill anyone, as far as I know. And yeah, she's kind of like Doom Guy in that she can probably rip and tear a lot, and she has the right equipment. The only difference is between her and Doom Guy is, or Doom Slayer's Doom Slayer, he leaves bodies on the floor, just a massive body count. Artemis, I think, is more restrained in how she does. Like, I think she'll kill you with this equipment if it's necessary. But yeah, other than that, she's very well managed in her equipment. But I mainly saw her use fists, though. I never saw her kill anyone. She just damaged stuff very much, and it was a blast to watch or read. And as I've mentioned in the past slides, the appeal for me is, well, I should take a step back. To quote another YouTuber, your mileage may vary, or your reasons for liking Artemis, if you're watching this, may differ from mine. But for me, the appeal was always the dynamic with Red Hood, the personality, like those two main things in general. But some other stuff I think I forgot to mention was she's a badass female warrior who still looks beautiful. Like usually when I see comic book characters who are women and they fight and kick ass and all that, they are super strong and have supernatural powers or unnatural abilities like Artemis, but they don't look like women. They look like either, well, they look like a cross between a man and a woman, and I think this is mostly because they're trying to appeal to that social justice crowd, who are a small minority online and should not be taken seriously. And another thing is, yeah, no, she just looks great while she does what she does. I always found that kind of interesting. I would chalk that up to being. I would normally chalk that up. I swear to God, my brain works sometimes. I normally chalk that up to the writer and the drawer actually wanting Artemis to look like a woman and actually be likable. That is my main reason, because usually when I see some of these characters that I don't like, they're usually from Marvel, and Rebirth started in a time when DC was having its act together and it wasn't run by a bunch of shitheads. There's the mysterious past, because this was something Lodell did that I liked. It kind of built up some mystique around Artemis's past before meeting Red Hood. It implied she had done things she wasn't proud of. It implied she had crossed people she shouldn't have crossed or wronged people she shouldn't have crossed. She wasn't always in the right, which is another point, but I'll get to that later. She was human. She did things that she regrets. We all do things we regret. I think we can all sympathize with her on that. So this also comes back to the whole, people sometimes say they can't identify with a character who doesn't look or doesn't have the same gender as them. I look nothing like Artemis, aside from the white skin. That is about it. I'm not a redhead. I'm not an Amazonian. I don't have ovaries. And yeah, I can kind of sympathize with Artemis and the stuff she goes through. And the last appeal for me was she's she's not always in the right or in control. There are times when she does things that are stupid. I remember before she got the Bow of Ra, Aquila, who was her former best friend and former lover, she was doing something stupid, and Artemis went along with it. She was convinced to go along with it. I don't remember the specifics exactly, so I could be wrong on this. But yeah, she did stupid things, and Red Hood's intervention kind of stopped her from helping. Well, to be fair, it was a bad situation overall because it was the Bana Amazonians versus the dictator of Karak. It's hard to really say who was really in the right in that scenario. It was a shitty situation overall. But Red Hood kind of stands by her, convinces her to see the situation for what it is. And, well, actually, no, that's about it. Yeah, she is not always in the right or in control, which again is something that we could sympathize with. We may think we are in the right in some circumstances, and it later turns out, hey, I was being a shithead. Artemis kind of found herself in that situation. She might not have been completely in the wrong, but she wasn't completely in the right either. As for some of the characters, I would say Artemis could be compared to Donna Troy or Wonder Woman, mainly because, well, they're both Amazonians who have worked with the Red Hood in the past, and I would say Artemis is more in line with Wonder Woman in that she was part of a trinity, only she was part of the Dark Trinity with Red Hood and Bizarro, whereas Wonder Woman was part of the normal trinity with Batman and Superman. And yeah, those are the main two I would compare her to. I can't really think of anyone in another franchise that she reminds me of, other than, well, actually, no, there's no one actually. And so yeah, there's not. I mean, if you can think of someone in the comments, or someone in the comments, if you can think of a comparison to make, I would love to hear it because I, for the life of me, could not think of anyone else. Now, the takeaway with Artemis, I think it'll vary from person to person, but the takeaways from me were usually, well, this was something that actually kind of stood out as I thought about it more and more. Her being a bisexual redhead kind of made me think, well, she technically would fit the diversity quota that everyone wants in comics. And I'm probably going to get shit for this one, both from the people who are against identity politics and are for it, but I don't care. I kind of think this kind of showed to me that the diversity crowd are full of shit. Is that Artemis was a bisexual character that I'm pretty sure some people in the LGBT community would want, or I guess it's claimed that they want. But they were I don't think they were very vocal about Artemis. Then again, Artemis wasn't defined by her sexuality; she was defined by her personality and her talents. So I think this is something the normal crowd that Marvel and DC are currently pandering to would not think to. Just people that they're pandering to now probably don't give a shit about Artemis because she doesn't beat you over the head with the fact she's a bisexual. And she's probably one of my two favorite bisexuals in DC. There's her and John Constantine. It's possible to have a female character who is strong but retains femininity because one thing I really do not like about comics now, whenever I do see stills and images from modern comics when people are bitching about them, is how none of the female characters look like females. They look like a cross between a man and a woman. They look androgynous and not in the good way. And lastly, they are flawed. She is a flawed character, which I like. I like when a character has personal and physical flaws, mostly personal ones. But yeah, Artemis is just, well, not a mixed bag, but she has good and bad traits that I think make her feel more human. It makes her seem like someone you would meet in real life. Because I've met lots of people in my life who they were good, but they had moments where I just did not like them. Then again, I tend to not like most things, so. But she has these moments where she has problems that I think make her relatable, and some of the comic book characters now don't feel relatable. And back to the second point, another thing is people see they want strong females, but then they make them look like tomboys and not the cute kind. They just it's kind of infuriating. No, not infuriating. It's asinine how they go about writing female characters sometimes, and they do it to pander to these people who don't actually buy comics. Artemis, I think, is the exception to this in that she was both beautiful and both physically and mentally capable of dealing with situations that would not be bearable for most normal people. This could be attributed to her being an Amazonian. She had the physiology of one. She had everything except immortality. I think. It said the Bana-Mighdall lost that one when they separated from Themyscira, so yeah, aside from that, she has these abilities. But you can also say that about a lot of characters like Captain Marvel that they've turned into who looks more masculine than feminine, and she's supposed to be a woman. And yet, I found Artemis more relatable and more compelling than I did. Well, from what I've read of Captain Marvel, yeah, she does not sound that compelling. She sounds boring. And I don't mean the movie. In the movie, she was a wood face, basically. But also Artemis, this was something else, is that Artemis had that mysterious factor to her backstory in this time, in the Rebirth timeline, that made me want to see more of her. I'm kind of hoping they might go back and give her own story, or they might use her again in another storyline for another hero. Because I enjoyed her in the stories with Red Hood. I'm hoping at some point she teams up with him again because I liked their dynamic. I'm hoping at some point they bring back Bizarro for some reason. Yeah, she was just all around a good character and one that I don't see a lot of authors and comics making as much. Then again, I've not read a lot of comics lately because they're kind of shite. And I really don't feel like giving money to people who hate their customers. And Artemis, well, yeah, again, she was a compelling character and someone that I would come back to read to see what would happen with her. And I think that's the best kind of character you can make, is one that brings you back for more. And that's all I can really say, other than have a nice day, and remember the game was rigged from the start.